My name is Ethan Mercer, and I need to tell you something that most men are too proud to admit. There was a moment in my life, sitting at my own birthday dinner table, surrounded by people who shared my last name, where I realized that the cruelest people you will ever meet are sometimes the ones who grew up in the same house as you. Not strangers, not enemies, family, the people who are supposed to catch you when you fall. Mine handed me a DNA test as a birthday gift, laughed in my face, and called me another man's mistake in front of everyone. What they didn't know, what none of them had the intelligence to even consider, was that the man sitting quietly at the head of that table for 38 years had already seen every single move they were about to make. He had prepared for it. He had documented it. He had left me something they never expected. And by the time that lawyer opened that envelope in a downtown conference room with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows, everything they had spent years building was about to come undone. Stay with me, because what happened next didn't just change my life. It permanently ended theirs. And somewhere in this story, I think you're going to recognize something you've felt too. That quiet, suffocating feeling of being the person in the room who is never quite enough, never quite seen, never quite believed. If you've ever felt invisible in the one place you were supposed to belong, this story is for you. Because I promise you, the ending is nothing like what anyone saw coming. I grew up in a house in Columbus, Ohio that looked absolutely perfect from the outside. 3-car garage, manicured lawn, a wraparound porch my mother, Patricia Mercer, kept decorated through every season. The kind of house where neighbors wave at each other and the Christmas lights go up the day after Thanksgiving. From the outside, we were the Mercers. Solid, respectable, American. From the inside, cold. Not the kind of cold that happens during hard times. The deliberate kind. The manufactured kind. The kind of cold that one specific person in a household creates and maintains on purpose, because it keeps everyone else off balance and keeps them in control. That person was my older brother, Derek. Derek Mercer was 4 years older than me, and from the moment I was old enough to understand anything, I understood one thing clearly. Derek was the sun in our family's solar system, and I was somewhere out past Pluto, barely visible, barely relevant. He had the jaw, the charm, the athletic build, the loud laugh that filled every room. He was the starting quarterback at our high school, the one the neighbors talked about, the one Dad drove 3 hours to watch compete in regional championships. And my mother, a woman who was never unkind exactly, but who had a talent for not noticing the child who didn't demand to be noticed, orbited Derek the same way everyone else did. When Derek scored a touchdown, the whole family celebrated for a week. When I graduated valedictorian, my mother said, "That's wonderful, Ethan. Can you help carry in the groceries?" I learned early to stop measuring my worth by what that house was willing to give me. By the time I was 35, I had built something real. Not flashy, not loud, real. I was a senior financial analyst at a firm in Cincinnati, living in a quiet neighborhood, running on Saturday mornings, building a life that was stable and mine. I had a small group of people who actually knew me. I had learned how to stop shrinking. But family gravity is a strange force. You think you've escaped it, and then your father passes away, and suddenly you're right back inside it, breathing that same cold air like no time has passed at all. My father, Robert Mercer. He was a man of few words and enormous quiet. He worked in commercial real estate for 30 years, built something considerable, and spoke in careful, measured sentences that always meant exactly what they said and never more. He was not a demonstrative man. But there were these moments, a hand on my shoulder after a rough game of catch, a nod at my college graduation that I still see clearly when I close my eyes, a voicemail he left me when I got my first promotion that simply said, "I knew you would." He never said he was proud often, but when he said it, he meant it with his whole chest. He died of a cardiac event 14 months after his retirement. 67 years old. I flew back for the funeral and stood at his graveside with a grief that felt heavier than just losing him. It felt like losing the one thread that still connected me to the idea that that family was worth anything at all. 3 months after we buried him, my mother called me. Her voice had a brightness to it that felt scripted, like someone had given her lines. She said she wanted us all together for my birthday. A small dinner. Just family. She said the words, "just family," with an emphasis that I told myself was affection. Looking back, I understand now it was something else entirely. It was staging. I drove up on a Friday afternoon and pulled into the driveway of that house I hadn't called home in nearly a decade. The lemon polish smell hit me the moment I stepped inside. That smell hasn't changed in 30 years. The chandelier in the dining room still threw the same warm light. But the house felt different without my father's presence in it. Quieter in the wrong way. Like a theater after the show has ended, but before anyone has cleaned up. Derek was already there. He was sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of whiskey, wearing a blazer that cost more than my first car, looking like a man who had already won something he hadn't competed for yet. He glanced at me when I walked in and gave me the kind of nod you give someone you're tolerating. His wife, Claire, was picking at something on her phone in the corner. My mother was in the kitchen doing things that didn't need doing, adjusting a vase, wiping a clean counter, with that same slightly too bright smile she'd worn on the phone. I tried, that first hour, to have a real conversation. I asked about the estate gently, carefully. My mother's smile stiffened. "We're just not ready yet," she said, and her eyes went to Derek for exactly 1 second before they came back to me. That 1 second told me everything. Derek caught me looking and smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a man holding cards he can't wait to play. I told myself I was reading too much into it. That old habit. The one where you gaslit yourself into believing the people who hurt you weren't really doing it. I've done a lot of work to stop doing that. But that night, I slipped back into it the way you slip into clothes that no longer fit. Uncomfortable, but familiar. Dinner itself was a performance in the truest sense. Derek talked. He talked about his consulting firm, about a development deal he was working on, about the new kitchen renovation in their house, granite countertops, custom cabinetry, the whole thing. My mother laughed at everything, even the things that weren't funny. When I spoke, I watched the room's energy shift the way a room shifts when someone changes the channel. Not dramatically, just suddenly. The thing you were watching is gone, and something else is on. Derek had this gift for interrupting without appearing rude. He'd let me start a sentence, and then his voice would rise just slightly and pull the attention back to him before I reached the period. I noticed. I always notice. I just used to pretend I didn't. About 40 minutes into dinner, something changed in Derek's body language. He sat up a little straighter. He looked at my mother with a look that I now understand was a cue. A signal. She excused herself to get dessert. A grocery store cake she hadn't even removed from its plastic clamshell, and Derek reached beneath the table and produced a box. Silver wrapping paper, a white bow. He set it in front of me with the kind of ceremonial slowness that told me he had rehearsed this moment. "Happy birthday, little brother," he said, and his voice carried that razor-thin sweetness that people use when they want to wound you with a smile on their face. "Open it." There were 6 people in that room. Nobody moved. My mother stood in the doorway holding the cake, and I noticed she had gone a color I didn't have a word for. Not white exactly. Drained. Like something had been pulled out of her from the inside. I pulled back the silver paper. Inside the box was a DNA testing kit. The kind you mail in. Consumer grade. Sealed. Derek let the silence sit for just long enough to land, and then he laughed. Not a big laugh. A private, satisfied one. "Maybe it'll finally explain," he said slowly, savoring every word. "Why you've always been such a different kind of Mercer. Or maybe not a Mercer at all." He said it loudly enough for everyone to hear. Clearly, deliberately. And then he looked at me with that smile. The one that said, "I have been waiting to do this for years." The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. My mother made a sound, started to say his name, and then stopped. Stopped. Said nothing. Did nothing. And that silence from her, told me more than Derek's words ever could. Because if the thing Derek was implying was simply false, her reaction wouldn't have been fear. It would have been anger, or dismissal, or laughter. But what I saw in Patricia Mercer's face in that moment was not the face of a woman hearing a lie. It was the face of a woman watching a secret she had managed for decades begin to slip out of her control. I sat with it. I didn't throw the kid across the room. I didn't stand up and flip the table. I did what I have always done in that house. I got very, very still. And in that stillness, behind my eyes, I started thinking with complete, cold clarity. Derek wanted me to react. He wanted the scene. He wanted the spectacle. He wanted to watch me fall apart in real time in the house where he had always been the favorite. I was not going to give him that. I said, very quietly, "Thanks for the gift, Derek." And I put it back in the box. That night, in my old bedroom, the walls still painted a dark green the first had picked out at 17, I did not sleep. I went to the closet to find an old jacket, and in the process I started moving boxes, the way you do when you're unsettled and need your hands to do something. At the back of the closet, behind a box of textbooks and a pair of old cleats, I found an envelope. Unmarked. Unsealed. The dust around it had been shifted recently, not by me. Someone had moved this and put it back. Inside the envelope was a photograph. My father, younger, maybe late 20s, standing outside what looked like a county courthouse, next to a man I had never seen in my life. A man who, looking at the photograph in the yellow light of that small bedroom, had my same jaw, my same eyes, the same slight asymmetry to the left side of his face that I see every morning in the mirror. On the back of the photograph, in my mother's handwriting, 2 words: "Forgive me." My hands were completely steady when I took the pictures on my phone. That surprised me. I thought I'd be shaking. But something in me had been waiting for this confirmation so long that when it arrived, it didn't break anything. It just filled in a shape I had always known was there, but couldn't see. I went back to the closet and found the DNA kit. And I thought about Derek's face when he slid that box across the table. He wanted this to destroy me. He wanted the results to strip me of something. What he had not considered, what neither he nor my mother had considered, was that I was 35 years old. I had rebuilt myself from the ground up once already, and whatever those results said, I was not going to be erased by a piece of paper. I mailed the kit the next morning before I drove back to Cincinnati. Not because Derek wanted me to. Because I wanted the truth, whatever shape it came in. Because I had earned the right to know my own story. 5 weeks later, I was at my desk on a Tuesday afternoon when the notification appeared on my phone. I set down my coffee. I opened the app. No biological match to the Mercer family line. Suggested connection to the Calloway genetic lineage. A name I had never spoken. A family I had never met. Connected to me by blood in a way that the Mercers never were. I read it twice. Then I sat with it. I want to be honest with you about what that felt like, because I think this is the part that matters most. It didn't feel like the bottom falling out. It felt like the last piece of a puzzle I had been holding for 35 years clicking quietly into place. I was not a Mercer by blood, which explained, with a terrible, clarifying precision, why I had always felt like a guest in that house. Why the belonging never quite happened. Why the warmth I saw Derek receive from that family always looked to me like someone watching a movie through a window from the outside. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't too sensitive. I wasn't imagining it. There was a reason, and that reason had been carefully, deliberately kept from me for my entire life. I sent the results screenshot to my family group chat. No drama. No paragraph. Just the image and 1 sentence. Does anyone want to tell me what this means? My mother called within 3 minutes, sobbing. Not with remorse. With panic. Her words tumbled over each other. "Sweetheart, you don't understand. This is complicated. Things happened a long time ago. We moved past them." She never apologized. She never said she was sorry for 35 years of me being in the dark. She just begged me to delete the screenshot. To bury it again. The way she had buried it the first time. Derek texted 4 words. "Well, now you know." Cold. Satisfied. Like a man who had accomplished exactly what he set out to do. I called him that night. He answered on the second ring, his voice smooth and unbothered. I asked him why. Why the DNA kit as a gift? Why the public humiliation? Why now, 3 months after our father's funeral? He told me, and I will give him credit for one thing. He was honest about it. He said he had known for years. He said our mother had told him a long time ago, during a conversation he had no business being part of, and he had held that information the way people hold weapons, waiting for the right moment to use it. He said he believed that without a biological connection to the Mercer name, I had no legal standing in the estate. He had spent months researching it, consulting with lawyers, preparing a case. The DNA result, he believed, was his weapon. The birthday dinner was his stage. And humiliating me publicly in that house, in front of everyone, was how he intended to establish the narrative before the estate proceedings began. He actually believed that the moment those results came back, I would fold. That I would feel so illegitimate, so exposed, so ashamed, that I would walk away from whatever my father had left behind and let Derek take everything without a fight. What he had failed to calculate, in all his research and planning, was my father, Robert Mercer. The quiet man. The one Derek had always underestimated. The same way he'd underestimated me. I hired an attorney 3 days later. Her name was Margaret Osei. A woman known in estate law circles in Ohio for handling exactly this kind of case, the kind where one family member tries to weaponize biology to push another out of an inheritance. I brought her everything. The DNA results, the photograph from the closet, screenshots of Derek's texts, a recording of the phone call where he explained his own plan to me in his own words, legal in Ohio as a single-party consent state. She listened to all of it without changing her expression. Then she looked at me and said, "Your brother made a mistake that a lot of people make. He assumed that biological connection is the only thing that creates legal family. It isn't, not by a long shot, and especially not when the deceased left explicit instructions." She paused. "Your father left explicit instructions, Ethan, and I think you should prepare yourself for what's in them." Prepare myself. I thought about my father's voicemail, the nod at graduation. I knew you would. I think somewhere underneath all of it, I had always known he saw me. I just didn't know how much he had done about it. The will reading was scheduled 11 days later at the office of James Dalton, the estate attorney my father had retained for nearly 2 decades. The building was downtown, dark wood panels, marble flooring, the kind of place where serious decisions get announced. Margaret and I arrived early. She told me to observe everything. Speak only when necessary. Let the room reveal itself. My mother arrived next. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, hair hastily pinned back, dark circles visible beneath makeup applied in a hurry. She sat at the far end of the table without making eye contact with me, gripping her purse with both hands like it was the only solid thing in the room. Derek arrived last. He had dressed for this. Tailored suit, cufflinks, the posture of a man who believes he is about to receive something he is owed. He brought his own attorney, a man I recognized from billboards around Columbus, a lawyer who advertised specifically on aggressive estate litigation. Derek looked at me when he entered the room. He gave me a slow smile, one corner higher than the other, the smile of a man who believes the outcome is already decided. He sat down directly across from me, and he said nothing, and that said everything. He thought this was over. He thought he had already won. He had already spent the money in his head. I could see it in the way he held his body, like a man relaxing into a chair he believes belongs to him. James Dalton entered and moved to the head of the table with the deliberate calm of someone who understood completely what he was holding. He set a thick folder down, rested both hands on it, and looked at each person in that room slowly, one by one. "Before we begin," he said, "your father left explicit instructions for how this reading should proceed. He anticipated complications. He prepared for them. Everything I am about to read was documented with full knowledge of circumstances some of you may find surprising." He was looking at Derek when he said that last part. Derek's smile flickered. Just for a second. Just enough. Dalton opened the folder and began. "I, Robert James Mercer, of sound mind and deliberate purpose, declare this my final will and testament. To my son, Ethan James Mercer, I leave 70% of my estate, including the family home, all investment accounts, the commercial property holdings in Franklin County, and all remaining liquid assets." The room went silent in a way that rooms only go silent when something irreversible has just been said. Derek's chair scraped back. He was on his feet before Dalton had finished the sentence. "He is not your biological son. We have DNA proof. He has no legal claim to this estate." His attorney reached for his arm. Derek ignored him. "This is manipulation. This is fraud. This is—" Dalton held up one hand. One hand. Quietly. "Sit down, please. There is more." Derek stood for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then he sat. His jaw was tight enough to crack stone. Dalton continued reading. "I have been aware since Ethan was 2 years of age that he is not my biological child. I made the decision to raise him as my own. I made the decision to love him as my own. I make the decision now, in full knowledge and full sobriety, to leave him my legacy, because Ethan alone has demonstrated the integrity, the character, and the resilience that I would want to carry my name forward. No further justification is required, and none will be entertained." My mother closed her eyes. 2 tears went down her face. Derek's color had gone. His attorney had stopped writing. The room had gone very still. But Dalton still wasn't finished. He reached into the folder and produced a second set of documents. 8 months before his death, he said carefully, Mr. Mercer retained a private investigator to document any attempts to influence, manipulate, or interfere with the estate. He set the documents on the table and spread them across the surface like a slow reveal. The investigators' reports. Bank records. Withdrawal receipts totaling $63,000 made from joint accounts during my father's illness. Accounts Derek had access to as a listed family member. Meeting logs. Derek's consultations with 3 different estate attorneys over the course of 14 months before my father died. Each consultation with the same subject: how to challenge a will on the grounds of non-biological relationship. And one final document, a receipt for a consumer DNA testing kit, ordered to Derek's home address, gift-wrapped, purchased 61 days before my 35th birthday dinner. Dalton looked at Derek directly. Your father documented all of this. He set a copy of a handwritten letter on the table. Mr. Mercer asked me to read this aloud. He unfolded it. Derek, I know what you have been planning. I have known for some time. I want you to understand that this is not about anger. I am not angry. I am deeply, profoundly disappointed. Not because you want what you believe you deserve, but because you were willing to humiliate your brother to get it. You were willing to use his identity against him as a weapon. I raised you. I gave you everything I could give. And the lesson you took from your life in my house was that people are tools. That love is transactional. That family means only what benefits you. Ethan never believed that. He never asked for anything that wasn't his. He built something real with nothing but his own hands, and he did it quietly, without asking me to validate it. That is what I wanted to leave behind in this world. Not money. That. The consequences you are facing now are entirely your own construction. I hope someday you understand that. He folded the letter, placed it on the table. That was the end of it. That was my father, the quiet man. 38 years of quiet, and this was what he had been building in the silence. The sound that came from Derek's throat was something I can't fully describe. Not a word, not a cry. Something between rage and bewilderment. The sound of a man who has built an entire reality on a false premise, watching it fold in real time. His attorney leaned toward him and said something urgent and low. I caught 4 words. Do not contest this. Derek pulled away from him. His voice was shaking now, the smoothness completely gone. This is not legal. You cannot leave an estate to someone who isn't family. He looked at me with something that had dropped past hatred into something rawer. You did this. You manipulated a dying man. You wormed your way into his. Margaret stood. Her voice was measured and quiet, which made it hit harder. The will explicitly acknowledges Ethan's parentage. Your father documented his full awareness and his deliberate choice. Any contest would not only fail, it would trigger the no contest clause, which carries with it full repayment of all outstanding loans and unauthorized withdrawals, approximately $263,000. Derek went pale. That's not a loan. He gave me that money. Dalton looked at him over the folder. Not according to the estate records. Derek's attorney was gathering his papers. Standing. I need a moment with my client, he said. You don't have one available, Dalton replied. The reading is complete. I want to tell you what I felt in that moment, because I think this is the part that people don't talk about. The movies would have you believe that when justice finally arrives, when the thing that was taken from you is finally returned, when the person who spent years making you feel like nothing watches their scaffolding come down, you feel triumphant. Loud, like a fist through the air. That's not what I felt. I felt an enormous, exhausted quiet, like a held breath finally released. My father had seen me. He had seen me for 33 years and never made a performance of it. He had simply, quietly, deliberately, with the precision of a man who did everything with purpose, made sure that I would be okay. Made sure that Derek's plan would meet a wall he couldn't see coming. I opened the smaller envelope Dalton slid across the table to me. My name in my father's handwriting on the front. Inside, a single page. Ethan, you have spent your life believing you were invisible in this family. You were not invisible to me. I saw your patience. I saw your integrity. I saw the way you built your life without requiring anyone's applause. And I want you to know that I watched that with more pride than I ever found the right words to express. Biology is not what makes a father and a son. What makes a father and a son is showing up. Choosing each other. I chose you. I would choose you again. Take care of what I'm leaving behind, and take care of yourself. You always deserved more than this house gave you. I knew you would be all right. I always knew. I sat in that room for a moment longer than I needed to. My vision had gone blurry. Across the table, Derek was talking at his attorney in a low, furious voice, gesturing at documents. His composure completely fractured. My mother was sitting with her eyes closed, hands folded, a woman finally at the bottom of something she had been sliding toward for 35 years. And I thought about the birthday dinner, the silver paper, the smile on Derek's face when he slid that box across the table. He had handed me a DNA test as a weapon. He had expected it to erase me. Instead, it had set every one of my father's preparations into motion. Every tripwire my father had carefully, quietly laid down over the final months of his life. The investigator, the documented withdrawals, the no contest clause, the handwritten letter, all of it detonated in sequence, precisely because Derek had forced the moment. He had planned for years to destroy me, and every step of that plan had walked him directly into what my father had built for exactly that eventuality. The legal fallout moved faster than I expected. Derek's attorney withdrew the following morning. The attempted contest lasted approximately 20 minutes in front of a judge who read the no contest clause, reviewed the PI documentation, and dismissed it with the kind of efficiency that suggested she had seen this pattern before. The $63,000 in unauthorized withdrawals became personal debt, collectible by the estate within 12 months or subject to further legal proceedings. The loans, the money Derek had apparently been borrowing from my father for years and reclassifying in his own mind as gifts, were formally recorded as outstanding debts against his portion of what little inheritance remained to him, which, by the time the arithmetic was done, was very little. For the first time in my living memory, Derek Mercer looked cornered. Not humbled. Derek is constitutionally incapable of humility, but cornered. Caught by the person he had spent 4 decades underestimating. The man neither of us expected to be paying that close attention. My mother came to see me in Cincinnati 6 weeks later. She sat in my living room with her hands folded in her lap, looking smaller than I had ever seen her look, and she told me everything. The full story. A relationship before she married my father, a man named Thomas Calloway, a situation that became complicated and then became a secret and then became a 35-year architecture of silence. She told me she had never known how to undo it, that she had told Derek in a moment of weakness when he was a teenager, swore him to silence, and spent the next 20 years watching him hold that information with a growing sense of ownership over what he'd been trusted with. She told me my father had known since I was 2. She told me he had chosen, fully, deliberately, without reservation, to stay and to raise me. That the photograph I found in the closet was from a day he had met Thomas Calloway face to face and made his intentions clear. Ethan was his son, and nothing was going to change that. I listened to all of it. I did not reach for her hand. Some things need distance before they can become anything close to repaired, and I was honest with myself about where we were. I told her, I believe you want to make this right. But making things right starts with letting me live without being asked to carry your secrets anymore. She nodded. She didn't argue. That was progress, I suppose. I don't know what comes next for her and me. I'm not in a hurry to decide. I managed the estate through the following months with Margaret's help, settled the accounts, navigated the paperwork, made the decisions that needed making. It was not a small amount of work, but there was something clarifying about it, about being the person in that role, the responsible one, the one who shows up and handles it, the one my father chose. I thought about him often during those months. The quiet of him, the steadiness, the way he had loved me without making it loud, and without making it conditional, and without ever once making me feel like I was his son on a probationary basis. I think about the men in my life who have quietly, consistently showed up, not the ones who performed love, but the ones who practiced it. And he was at the top of that list. I'm glad I knew him. I'm glad he was the man who raised me, regardless of what any test says. I moved to the Pacific Northwest after everything was settled. Oregon. Quieter, greener, further from the gravity of all of it. I run on Saturday mornings on trails where the only sound is water and birds and the particular kind of silence that isn't cold. It's the other kind. The kind that actually rests you. And I want to say something to you before I finish this, something I've been thinking about the whole time I've been telling this story. If you have ever been the overlooked one, the one who brought home the grades and got a distracted nod, the one who sat at the dinner table and felt the volume of your existence get turned down when someone else walked in, I want you to hear this directly. That was not your imagination. That was not you being too sensitive or ungrateful or difficult to love. Some families build invisible hierarchies and spend decades maintaining them, and the child at the bottom of that hierarchy is not the problem. They never were. The problem is the hierarchy. And the people who benefit from it will do almost anything to keep it in place, including weaponizing your own identity against you, handing you a DNA test at your birthday dinner, and laughing while they do it. But here is what Derek never understood, and my father always did. Who you are is not determined by who contributed biology to your existence. It is determined by who showed up, who chose you, who built something with you, quietly, over decades, without needing applause for it. I am not a Mercer by blood. I am a Mercer by the deliberate, repeated, documented choice of a man who looked at a situation that would have broken most people and decided to love anyway. That is not a small thing. That is everything. My father gave me everything. Not just the estate, not just the house, not just the accounts. He gave me proof, in writing, in his own handwriting, that I was never invisible. I was seen the whole time. And if you've been waiting for someone to see you the way he saw me, I want you to know that the right people do see you. And sometimes the most important things they do for you are the things they do quietly, when no one else is watching, for reasons they might not say out loud until it's the very last chance they get. Share this if it hits something in you. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this one. And leave me a comment, not with emoji, but with words. Tell me about the person in your life who chose you. Because those people deserve to be talked about.